Hey everyone, this is Car Ray Rob, where I'm Ray.
And I'm Rob, and we want to welcome you to our podcast, Say Hello to My Little Film.
Hey there, it'll be just a little while till Ray and Rob spit their spittle. Come on, check out of the hospital. So grab some of your best peanut brittle. This will be a darn good transmittal. And say hello to my little film.
That's right, everyone. We are back with a brand new episode of Say Hello to My Little Film. It is August. I can't believe it's already August. How the hell did that happen? But Ray, tell us what it is we do here on our podcast.
With Say Hello to My Little Film, Rob, this is Rob's month.
It's
He's
my
going to
month.
introduce a movie to me that I've never seen, but he has. And not only has he seen it, he loves it. And he thinks it's about time I check it out.
Absolutely. We call that our fresh perspective on a retrospective review.
What do you got for me, Rob?
Yep, this month is my month, or my episode.
Yeah.
And I have something that I'm excited to show you. It was a movie that was definitely on my original list even for last season,
For
but
season one.
I didn't get around to
Well,
it.
it's about time then.
It is about time, because not only is this a movie that I last month I recommended a movie I wasn't sure if you're gonna love.
Right.
I have a pretty strong feeling you're gonna love this
Oh,
movie.
I like that. I like the sound of that.
I'm coming back with something that I believe you are gonna love, and that's because it's by a couple of directors that I know you love, but from an era that you're not as familiar with as some
Okay.
other eras. They've been directing for a long time. You love their movies.
We've done the Wachowskis
We
already.
did the Wachowskis. It's not the Wachowskis, but it's close.
It's got to be the Coens then.
Maybe.
Okay. All right, well, Rob, tell me what you got.
What do you got? What do you got?
Well, Ray, you hit the nail on the proverbial head.
Yes.
It is the Coen Brothers.
Yes.
It is. I know it's easy to be very, current with the Coen Brothers.
Sure.
Or now the Coen brother, considering one of them has stopped directing at this point. But there was a whole era, really before FARGO. And, a lot of...
was?
I know. People, it's like shocked that FARGO was not their first feature.
Yeah.
And it wasn't by a country mile. But I know, I showed you Blood Simple before, correct?
Yes, I think so.
That
I
was
think
their
I have it
first
now,
one. Yeah, that's their first feature. But then they went on to do Raising Arizona, and the movie I am going to show you today. Miller's Crossing was another one they did, but the movie I am settled on today is Barton Fink.
Oh, yep, haven't seen it.
Okay, I didn't feel like you had. Like I said, I know there's a lot of those earlier movies that you haven't seen, and Miller's Crossing is great. I'm a big fan of Raising Arizona, but I really love Barton Fink, and I thought you would too. So it stars John Turturro, who's obviously a mainstay in a lot of Coen Brothers work,
And I love them.
as you should, and another mainstay, which is John Goodman.
Love them.
So again, both pre-Lebowski,
Right.
performances by both these guys. And so John Turturro stars as a playwright who has moved to Hollywood to get into the Hollywood filmmaking in the 40s.
Okay.
So he's...
Period piece.
It's a period piece. And so he moves to L.A. to write a movie, and he's hired on a small budget feature, and he gets one sentence written, and then blah, writer's block. And so he's trying to write this movie, and John Goodman plays an insurance salesman who lives next door to him in this tiny apartment. And the thing I love about Barton Fink is it's still in that kind of visceral nature of the Coen Brothers dramedy, if you will. They're mixed of dramedy and comedy, because there's moments that are just laugh out loud hilarious, and then eyebrow raising drama. You're like, oh my god, how does this work? And Barton Fink is, like I said, Miller's Crossing is one that I think a lot of people low key say is their best movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely can see where they're coming from, but like I said, I really have a soft spot for Barton Fink.
I'm kind of excited to see it. I like the premise. I like the cast. I love the directors. Seems like that's a recipe for success for me.
Yeah, there's just a lot to love about this movie, and like I said, I I'm excited for you to see it because, as I said before, this is a movie that I'm going in with a pretty high expectation that you're going to love. But who knows? Maybe I will be disappointed.
Yeah, and I'd almost be disappointed in myself if I don't like it, but it's definitely a possibility. I hope it's a small one, but there's only one way to find out.
That's
and that's to
right.
go check it out.
We gotta go check it out.
We're gonna take a break and we're gonna go watch this movie that Robbie is recommending for us. We're gonna invite you guys to do the same. Pause the podcast if you guys haven't checked out
Barton Fink.
Barton Fink.
You will remember that name when this is over.
I kept thinking of Miller's Crossing because that's just the last thing that popped in my head. But yeah, go check out Barton Fink if you haven't done it. Come back, unpause the podcast, and listen to what I have to say and what Rob's going to teach me about this Coen Brothers movie that is missing in my catalog.
Ray and Rob are currently watching the film. You may be also watching the film. If you're not, then you're listening to me say that Ray and Rob are watching the film. They'll be right back when they're done watching the film.
All right, everybody, we are back. Me and Rob have watched Barton Fink, and now I'm thinking about, did Barton Fink stink? That's what we got to talk about here.
Oh man, that's coming out of the gate swinging. Did Barton Fink stink? Well, we will get there.
A lot to break down.
A lot to break down to get to that question. But I have a question before we get to that one. And, it's something that I always think when I watch Barton Fink. And now that I have a new, fresh perspective, a new set of eyes on Barton Fink, I want to see if you can help me answer that question. And it is this. Is Barton Fink a movie written by writers who love writers or written by writers who hate writers?
Yeah, okay, I can see that. I definitely found myself pondering that same thing while watching this because, I love a good old fashioned Hollywood movie that's about making Hollywood movies,
right?
Or those different processes there without. So this one obviously is tackling writing. Barton Fink, our lead character, the name of the movie is the writer who we are watching.
Yeah, and it's almost pretty much exclusively the writing side of it.
Yeah.
There's no production of it in any kind of, a little bit of the business side of it, where he's dealing with some of the business types, producers and stuff like that. But really it is about the writer trying to, wring the story out of the rag, if you will.
Yeah, because Barton is totally blocked up. And I think there's a lot of things that compound to that, which I think are always interesting when they talk about, why, writers go on writer's block or trying to squeeze the orange and trying to get art from a writer. You can't do it on deadlines necessarily. Right?
Sure.
And I think that's a big thing that the movie is kind of saying, from the very jump, what's that executive's name? Lipnick?
Yep.
I loved him, first of all. His character was great.
Michael Lerner, I think is his name.
Yeah, he was awesome. Michael Lerner, he was great. He was one of my favorite characters. Not that I liked the character, I just loved what he was. The real actor was doing with the character.
Yeah.
It's so Coen Brothers, in a way where it's it's more unique than I think when a character's acting. We were talking about this before with a Wes Anderson movie.
Sure.
Where it's they act, sometimes it feels like they're acting a certain way or they're directing a certain way. Where he feels like he lives in a Coen Brothers movie, as Mr. Lipnick, but it doesn't feel like anything necessarily specific. It just has the vibe of a Coen Brothers movie.
Absolutely, and especially this era of Coen Brothers.
Yeah.
I think that they've been making movies long enough now that they have distinct eras. And this is obviously pre-Oscar Coen Brothers.
Yeah.
When they're still kind of on the fringes a bit. So pre-Fargo. So it's I think they had a very distinctive style here that you could kind of see between this or Miller's Crossing or the Hudsucker Proxy, which is another big favorite of mine, is the Hudsucker Proxy. Yes. And I that's another reason why I really like Barton Fink, because it's still kind of in that vein of Coen Brothers.
Yeah, and so Barton Fink, he's getting this pressure. He's got this deadline to write, and I think that's the kind of the early part of the movie. I think that's what is blocking him, is that he's now on a deadline. Where and I kind of we kind of see this even like today, I think with like maybe the de-evolution of Marvel, it is when Disney Plus came out and they were put on this mandate to create more content, more. We need to fill up the streaming service. Like quality goes down.
Sure.
But the funny thing I think that this movie says, and Lipnick directly states that like I don't care about quality. I need something to put in the theaters. Like I just want a B movie.
Yeah. Well, and it's an interesting dynamic that I think was definitely prevalent at this time, especially because this was still, I mean, 41. It's not like movies were a brand new thing, obviously,
No.
but as a medium, they were still pretty young comparatively. So for a character like Barton Fink, who was very much a playwright, that is a serious writer,
Yeah.
and Hollywood, by that time was starting to kind of vacuum up novelists and stuff like that to come and do work for them, but it still wasn't necessarily considered to be prestigious work per se.
Yeah.
Um, so with somebody like Barton Fink, going from this kind of playwright mentality where you're right, you're not necessarily on a deadline because you write the play first and then you get everything
Pitch
together
it
to
and,
pitch it and to put it on. For this, it's like, okay, this is a project, this is an assignment, this is something you need to do, and it was kind of, you're right, more of like a factory, if you will,
Yeah.
than a true creative process.
Yeah, and I think like another thing I thought was interesting, and I don't know if the Coen Brothers are speaking to this, but it's like, okay, so at the end of the movie, Barton Fink does find his inspiration. He writes what he thinks a great movie,
Right.
and then they reject it because like I didn't want a great movie. I
Right.
wanted just a little whatever.
Right.
Like you think that's a commentary on something that maybe they've felt in Hollywood? Like
I'm sure it is, and I think there's a lot, especially with the Lipnick Barton Fink relationship. So it's like, you get that first scene of them together, and Lipnick, it's like he's gonna move mountains for Barton Fink.
Yeah.
He's gonna, like, we love writers here, writer. I think I've got the line here. It's like, here writers are king or something like that, or the writer is king. And as a writer myself, I know that's not true.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I
Right.
know that's not true. Like, I know you can kind of get to a point where that can be somewhat true, but for the most part, no, that is not true. Uh, so it's interesting for them to kind of court him in such a way. And again, that kind of goes back to what I was saying before about how, I think especially at this time, these types of guys, these types of movie makers really were just kind of looking for literary talent, kind of
Yeah.
like I said, vacuuming up, novelists, playwrights, things of that nature to kind of bring, somewhat legitimacy,
Yeah.
to the pictures, if you will, but also they figure, oh, well, you're a great writer, you can just crank stuff out.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, and especially I think that time, like in the 40s and way before, it was a lot about who was in the movie and not what the movie was about as much.
Sure. Well, yeah, studio system for sure,
Yeah.
because everybody's under contract,
Right.
and it's like, who have you signed? It's like a sports team,
Yeah,
in that
exactly.
regard.
Yeah, but so a sidebar question for you, because I think one thing that the movie doesn't really tell you, and maybe it's not hugely important, but do you think what Barton wrote was good? Because he kind of is going a little bit crazy at
Yeah.
this time, and so it's like you're not 100% sure what he pulled as his inspiration, not 100% sure what he wrote.
Yeah, I mean, I would go out on a limb and say yes, it probably
says it was.
and that again could kind of is that kind of commentary on writers, because writers, well, I mean, there's a lot of stuff I write that I hate, but you know what I mean. Like
Sure.
the stereotypical writers, like, I love everything. I'm the
Right.
great writer. I write everything. It's all great. But I think in this instance they are trying to say that it was great, but you're right, it's not what they wanted, because
Lipnick
he
doesn't want great.
Right. Well, and not only that, it wasn't a wrestling picture, which is what they wanted.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, they couldn't see the lead actor in it necessarily.
Right. Yeah, and there's a lot to that, and you're right. Like in that instance, you kind of bring up a good point where at that time, because it was a contract deal where actors and actresses were under contract with each studio, you had those actors and actresses you're specifically writing for them. It's like,
Yeah.
you need this person to be in this role. It's not like where you're writing a spec script and you're like, well, we don't know who's going to play any of these parts, it could go anywhere and anybody could play them. That's not how it was per se.
All right, well, going back to just Barton, like as a character, like again, another person. I'm like, this is a Coen Brothers movie character. Like he's kind of pathetic, but kind of great at the same time. Like you just want to give him a hug sometimes. But I think when you talk about do they love writers or do they hate writers,
Mhm.
like if that's the question we're kind of thinking about. Like one scene I think makes me think they hate writers is like that USO scene. Like after he finished his script and he
Oh
goes to
yeah,
like the USO
right.
party, or I'm not sure a better way to
No, no, that's what it
explain
was.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but he's like he gets in a fight with all the sailors and he's just going like I'm a creator,
Right.
like
I
I'm
create.
yeah, I'm better than you
Right.
guys. Like I thought there was that pompousness that kind of came out of nowhere for Barton Fink, but when you have this maybe this this joy of finally finishing this script that he was so blocked up on, maybe it takes you out of character a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and there's that feeling of triumph. I get that. I
Sure.
definitely understand that. And it can kind of take you to maybe an unearned place in a certain regard. But, it's funny, you talk about him kind of being this pompous character. There's a lot of that through this movie.
Yeah.
I mean, I think about when, they finally enter John Goodman.
Yes.
I mean, and there's multiple scenes, since John Goodman in his eyes is the working man, and that's supposedly,
Who he's trying to connect with.
right, and who he
He's an
and it's
advocate
funny,
for.
right, and is an advocate for, and has been heralded as that
Yeah.
before he even got this job. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of his claim to fame, is he, heralds the voice of the working man. So, and then when confronted with the working man, he won't listen to him.
Yeah.
It's like I got stories I could tell, and he always cuts him off.
Yeah, there's a bit of like an elitist to
Definitely.
Barton in that respect. He does, and John Goodman's character is so darn charming
Oh, I know.
early on.
God, I just love John Goodman.
Yeah. Oh
in
yeah.
everything.
He's
He's
great.
so great.
And he's just perfect in a Coen Brothers movie.
He really is, especially this era, John Goodman. But I mean, I'm sure he'd still be great in it, and if he was in a Coen Brothers movie now. But granted, they feel a little different.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily feel like this anymore. But yeah, for this era, for sure. And obviously he would go on to work with them in like, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? But he had worked with them before in Raising Arizona.
Yeah.
And,
Well, the Big Lebowski. Come on
and
now.
the Big Lebowski, of course, and the Big Lebowski.
But yeah, so Barton has this issue, and it's pretty clear early on that you kind of are seeing like he won't. He's a writer. He needs to find a story, but he won't listen to anything around him to find it, and that
Right.
that's another reson why he's got this block, right?
Yeah.
So it's the pressure. It's maybe his salary. He's getting paid a lot of money, which is just another layer of pressure. Like
Right.
now he's got to put out, and then there's like this personal handicap where he won't listen to people and like find the stories that are right around him.
Yeah. Well, and there, I'm sure as a writer, he has this idea of like, well, I have to, somewhat understand what I'm writing.
Sure,
And this
yeah.
is a genre, something he's never written before. It's completely alien to him. And they do kind of go out of their way to, in a couple different things. One, make him realize, well, you don't necessarily have to. Like, it's kind of by the numbers a little
Yeah.
bit. And then, even like when you bring in like Tony Shalhoub, who is really great for only being in it like two scenes, maybe two scenes.
Yeah, maybe three.
Right.
Depending how you break it up, but definitely.
Yeah.
He's great.
It kind of puts him, like, okay, we'll go show him wrestling pictures, show him the dailies from the
Yeah.
new one that's being shot. So it's like, they're doing what they can to kind of get him in that mind space to write this movie. But it doesn't necessarily, I mean, really in the end, it doesn't work in the way that they want it to work.
Yeah. I think I just want to touch on, you mentioned Tony Shalhoub being in the movie, and like the Coen Brothers' ability to cast great character actors
Oh my
for
God.
roles that are so small. Like obviously Steve Buscemi's in this.
Yep. Very
Maybe
little.
barely speaks,
Yeah.
but it's like, you know what? It's like it's really a genius thing to put like one of the top-notch character actors you can in these small parts to bring life to some of these side characters and just keep putting depth to the movie. I think they always haven't just done a great job with that.
Yeah, you got John Mahoney from Frasier as
Yep.
W.P. Mayhew, which
Yeah, I
I
was-
mean, great.
Yeah, I kind of thought he was going to be in more scenes than
Yeah.
he ended up being in. So,
Yeah, but I think it was a great how they kind of used that character again as this idea of like, is this a movie about writers, or is this a movie by writers who love or hate writers? I think the Mayhew character is another one possibly for a hate writers.
Yeah.
Because it's, they kind of, he's a stereotype of that, drunkard writer
yeah,
who
the Hemingway.
right, the Hemingway, that kind of thing. But it's like, but then he even gets to the point where he finds out like he didn't even write his last two books because he's too drunk.
Yeah.
His Gal Friday
Self-destructiveness,
like
yeah.
assistant Judy Davis, who's also great in
Audrey.
it, Audrey, right? Um, uh, Wrote them,
Yeah.
and she's the one who did it, and she has kind of downplay her involvement, but it's just, again, it kind of goes to that stereotypical writer where that self-destructive nature.
Yeah. And so, one question that I still have kind of like as I watch the movie is like, how self-destructive was Barton Fink? So, and I guess my question for that is, did he kill Audrey or not? Like, I think I love the ambiguity about what actually
Right.
happened here. I mean, I guess you could say like Charlie or John Goodman's character potentially did it as a way of revenge, but like
Right.
not necessarily clear. Like he was known for chopping women's head off, and that's not how Audrey died. Like it kind of maybe potentially feel like it'd be hard for him to have snuck into the room. Like, what do you believe that Charlie killed Audrey, or do you think
I think Charlie
Barton
killed
did?
Audrey. I think Charlie heard the noise through the pipes, because he
Yeah.
always like, I can hear everything that goes on. I don't know if it's the pipes or the walls
Yeah.
or whatever. Like, and they kind of did that. One great thing that this is off topic in a way, but not because we're talking about this particular thing, is the transitions in this movie are fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
The Coen Brothers are able to kind of transition in and out of scenes in such amazing ways, and one of them was this scene where they kind of went to the drain, like they kind of like
Yeah,
go
they
over to the bathroom,
pan to
go
the
into
bathroom,
room,
yep.
and go into the sink, and that's what makes me think that Charlie was the one who heard whatever, and then for whatever reason came in and
Oh,
killed
so he's
Audrey.
hearing through the
He's
pipes.
hearing
Yeah,
through the pipes.
I kind of was
exactly.
taking it as like Barton Fink's throwing his life down the drain by starting this affair.
There you
but
go.
maybe
There
both.
you go. Maybe, but I'm just thinking about
Yeah.
what he had said.
Yeah,
but,
don't forget people are listening.
right.
What was the deal with the wallpaper? All right, so just sidebar, another sidebar. Like, what did that had to symbolize something? Maybe we could transition to what some of the symbolism of this movie, because it's apparent there are.
Yeah.
But like the wallpaper was one that I couldn't tell if this was like just a deteriorating of the world around him, or did that mean something?
I mean, I could see a few different things. I could see it being, so obviously one of Barton's big issues is, just over the overarching issue is a writer's block
Sure.
and distraction.
Sure.
When Charlie comes in, that ends up kind of being a bit of that as well. He keeps coming in, they keep having these conversations. It seems like at first it's a bother, but then it's almost welcomed. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, it's almost like this familiar face, and it's almost like an excuse not to write. For
Exactly.
whatever reason.
Remember when you're doing homework, you were looking for things to take
Right.
you away from doing it.
Right. But, when you're, again, kind of as a writer, there are definitely times where every little thing becomes a distraction.
Sure.
And I think the peeling wallpaper kind of just started that.
Well, that would distract me too. The
Right.
wallpaper was gross.
Right. Well, and that it's very textural too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which is also
Thick.
kind of it's very thick.
Thick
It's very
wallpaper.
gooey, like the glue on
Yeah.
the back. And I think that was also part of it too, is the heat.
Yeah.
And I think that the
heat,
fire.
My God, the heat.
Right. I think the fire, overall ended up kind of being a bit of the symbolism as well. But I agree. I think, I'd go out on a limb and actually say that I think Barton Fink, as far as like symbolism goes, probably is the movie that contains the most quote unquote symbolism in a Coen Brothers movie that I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, I get that, because it's in a way it's kind of the most straightforward movie
Sure.
that they've done. Like, there's not a lot of weird plot twisty type things.
No.
There's some good like cliffhanger stuff, like waking up with Audrey dead
Right.
was great. The finding out that Charlie's a serial killer, great.
Right. Yeah.
But it's pretty linear. Like
Yeah.
the movie doesn't swerve too many times.
No.
So
you
then
know.
you layer it more.
Right, yeah, but I think it's a simplistic story, but it has a lot to say in
Yeah.
that regard. Like I said, in that symbolism kind of way, that metaphysical kind
Sure.
of way, existential kind of way, and I think even going so far as I think characters symbolize a lot in this movie. I think Charlie is one that I think is a big symbol. I think he kind of symbolizes distraction,
Sure.
especially early on, because again, it's that idea of like he keeps showing up, like he
Yeah.
is the initial distraction, because
Sure.
he hears him crying or whatever in the next room, calls the front desk, and then one thing leads to another, and he comes over
Right.
without being complained. But it's also, again, he kind of symbolizes the true working man, kind of that disconnect that Barton has, and I think there's a couple of really great lines. After everything's kind of done, after the murder, after all that stuff, when that he's Carl Munt, and then he comes back, and I think there's a lot of great symbolism in some of the lines he says, and he even says this one kind of early on when he tells Barton that he's leaving, where he's like, things are all balled up at the head office.
Uh-huh.
And I think head office as a 2-word phrase is very symbolic in this movie, because I think he literally is talking about the head
coming off,
right, and the head. Well, not just coming off, but like the head office and things being balled up inside the head office, which is that whole idea of writer's block, if you will, or just it's that kind of thing. I think that there's when he says you're just a tourist with a typewriter, like I think that's just an insanely good line. And I think like most writers are, and they don't even realize it.
Sure.
And I think again that kind of goes back to what we were saying before about, is this a movie by writers who hate writers or love writers? That's a line that makes me think they hate writers.
Yeah.
It's like, you're just a tourist with a typewriter, and I think that was really, really powerful in that regard.
Okay, well, thinking of head office or head off, as I said, what about the what's in the box?
What's in the box?
What's in the box?
What's in the box? They did it first.
I know. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Because Charlie gives a head shaped sized box.
What else could be in that box?
But Barton Fink does shake it at one time, and I'm like, it doesn't sound like there's a head in there. And whose head would it be?
Yeah.
But what's in the box?
It's definitely a head. Maybe it's Barton's own head.
Yeah, that'd be interesting if they just peek inside and they don't show it. How freaks
my
out.
Own head?
But definitely, I'm sure there's probably definitely a huge amount of symbolism that just kind of circles around around Charlie. Like
but it could be Mayhew's head, because he left, and that's the other reason.
It could have been his family's head. Or remember? No,
that was
before he left. That was before he left.
Right, that was before he left.
Yeah.
And that's why I was thinking that maybe it might have been Mayhew, because Charlie obviously clearly went and killed Mayhew.
Yeah.
And, took his head too. So that could have been Mayhew's head in the box.
You might need this, yeah.
But maybe it's again, kind of that symbolism for Barton's own head.
Sure.
In a box.
It's supposed to make him think.
Right.
And I did like the idea of you saying that Charlie could be that could represent distraction, because at one point he's a distraction. And I think toward the middle of the movie he's a welcome distraction, which distractions are.
Yep.
And then when that distraction leaves and you have no choice but to work, he gets to work.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting idea. But you mentioned transitions. And I think I want to talk about this one scene, but let me start with the transition out of the scene, because one of my favorite transitions of this movie was Charlie and Barton walk away from each other for the final time in the building that's burning down.
Yeah.
Like the hallways engulfed in flames, surely symbolizing the hell that Barton is in.
Yeah.
And then this is a great shot of John Goodman walking back into his room.
Yeah.
And then you turn around, and then Barton's walking down the hallway of fire.
Right.
I mean, I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's beautiful.
In a crazy psycho way.
Yeah. No, it's beautifully shot, and the tension to build up in that scene is so good, because you got these detectives, in the apartment. They're convinced that Barton's part of this whole thing.
Sure.
And then they
have the blood splatter all over Barton's bed, so he's in bad shape.
Yeah, it's in bad shape.
Doesn't look good.
And then they go out in the hallway, and then way down that you have the long shot down the hallway, and you see the light for the elevator come on, and then when the fire kind of starts from the elevator, and then Charlie comes out, and I mean it's so beautifully framed. And then you have him just haul off and just run down the hallway. Look upon me. I'll show you the life of the mind.
As he's shooting a shotgun.
Right, as he's shooting the shotgun. And it's just, it's so crazy, because this is not the movie that you would expect to see that scene in.
Right.
Per se.
Yeah, I agree with that. Because, one thing I was pondering as I watched the movie was kind of thinking, like, what genre necessarily is this movie? Like,
Sure.
It definitely feels noir. Like, there's some type of subgenre of noir here.
Sure.
There's that whole scene's got a very horror element-esque to it.
Mm-hmm.
How would you define this movie's genre?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I mean, I think there's a lot of different genres. I'd probably call it, and this is going to sound terribly
Filmmaking
cliche.
noir?
No. But it's just almost a throwaway genre at this point. Unfortunately, these days, I feel like it's just completely oversaturated, if you will. But it's the idea of the dramedy. And I think that's something that the Coen brothers really kind of pioneered in a lot of ways. And I think that's what I mean. Where I feel like if there's a movie that I feel comfortable putting that label onto, it would be a Coen brothers movie, especially from this era, because I feel like they're the ones that really did pioneer it. Whereas now it's like, every hipster in LA writes a dramedy, and it's,
Sure.
you know what I mean, and
Sure.
it's whatever. But I do think there is that noir element to it, and I totally get that. And, part of that is the fact that it takes place in 1941. I think there's
Yeah.
like that kind of just natural feeling of that, and the way people speak and all of that. I get that,
Yeah.
just because that that's kind of what you associate with the film noir genre. But there's not, there's a little bit of a not even really a mystery. Like you said, you can kind of, like, as a viewer, kind of wonder who killed Audrey, or
Sure.
whatnot. But like, uh, that comes so late
Yeah.
in the movie. You know what I mean? It's not really a driving force in that regard.
No. The mystery is he going to be able to write anything worth a darn?
Right, which is it could be an interesting way to look at a noir. You know what I
Sure,
mean? Like,
yeah.
Can you or can you not write this?
But circling back, to that final shot of when Barton was walking down the hallway, the one as beautiful as the shot was, I was thinking in my mind, like, go get that cool picture of the woman on the beach.
Oh, sure.
Because I thought that was an interesting use of, like, I think symbolism or
I would,
metaphor
yeah.
of this movie, because it's almost like it's this one beautiful thing
Right.
in this lousy,
Peace,
horrible,
yeah.
this lousy, horrible situation he's in. It's like
Yeah.
it's like a shining light or a guiding light in a way. I think.
Yeah.
A bright spot in a dim hotel room.
Yeah, no, and I can agree with that. And I think there's a bit of peace and tranquility in it. But
Right.
there's also, so it's funny. I think you can go look at the picture a couple of different ways, because one, a lot of writers won't write in rooms with windows because they call them a distraction.
Sure.
So that almost seemed to me like, again, like this idea of a writer writing in front of a window, because it's, he's not looking outside, clearly, but it's
It's an outside landscape.
right, it's an outside landscape. So it's this idea of, I could be there sitting on a beach, but and just that kind of that peace. And I think I think that's also kind of something to think about, as far as our overall question goes about loving writers or hating writers, because where Barton ends up on that beach, kind of having this peace after putting himself through hell to write this story that he thinks is his best work, but everybody else hates,
Right.
or the people who care hate, supposed to care hate, and it's like almost like a reward for a job well done.
Yeah.
So it's almost, again, kind of idolizing the process, if you will, and the aftermath of it.
That's cool. Yeah, that's cool. I liked I liked how I liked tying that knot a little bit, because to me too, I think the ending when I saw it, because I kind of, like I said, I kind of thought of that picture as that bright spot in the dimness of this hotel or the situation he's in, and then at the end of the movie when he's on the beach and his life's kind of ruined a little bit, people have been murdered, he's still kind of tied to this murder that the two detectives that maybe were going to wrap him up in it are now dead, so
Right.
maybe he's good to go and he's clean, but like then he sees the living interpretation of the bright spot.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, so it's interesting, and this kind of goes back to what you were asking about earlier about what's in the box.
Yeah.
And so the lady on the beach literally asks him, like, what's in the box? And then she asks him, isn't it yours?
Right.
That's what I was like, is it your head?
Yeah.
Like, so that's why it makes me think, like, is it Barton's head? Because he's carrying his head in a box? Because that's the whole thing. It's like, isn't it yours? Not just the package, but what's inside of it.
Right.
So I don't know. That's where that kind of came from with me. But it was kind of funny when he's like, "Are you in pictures?" He asks her,
Yeah.
like, "Are you in pictures?" And no. And then it's like she does the picture pose.
Right.
Like it's great. Like it's such
You're
a
in the
great
picture I
ending.
were
Yeah,
thinking of.
it's such a great ending.
Yeah, it certainly is.
Well, another thing I wanted to kind of talk about, especially with Barton Fink, and there's a lot of movies that are like this, and there's a lot of people who feel like the main character of a movie has to be likable,
Sure.
and I'm not necessarily of that mindset. I think you can make a character unlikable and still interesting at the same time. But but sometimes there are characters that you are feel unlikable that actually are. So my question to you,
Yeah.
Ray, is do you find Barton to be a likable character?
Well, it's interesting because a comment that we've made on this podcast many times is that whether your lead character is likable or not, you root for them
Right.
because they're the lead character of the movie, and that's just what you
Exactly.
naturally do as an audience. It's kind of what we're
Exactly.
trained to do. So I do find myself rooting for Barton throughout the
Mhm.
movie. Like I want him to like crack this, this movie, crack this story, and be able to become a good writer, or not become a good writer, but create a good script,
Mhm.
and like meet this task and be able to deliver on what he's promised. So I think I do root for him, but do I necessarily find him likable? I don't know. Like I don't know if I'd want to go and sit down and have a beer with him or not, anything like
Sure.
that. But it's kind of interesting, like you again, as we're kind of inching toward answering this question of like, is this movie about liking writers or hating it, or is this movie saying that like writers are likable or not? I really liked that conversation with WP and Barton when they were kind of comparing styles in a way where
Mhm.
Barton always talks about like the way he writes comes from inner pain,
Right.
where WP says he's more of an escapist. He just likes making things up,
Right.
and I kind of relate more to like, hey, I just like to make stuff up. But Barton, like, because that's who he is, he likes, he has to deal with his inner pain. I guess in a way that is going to make you a little bit unlikable as a character because if he doesn't, I mean, he's got to deal with a lot of inner pain, and that's not always the funnest thing or more supportive thing as a viewer to watch.
Yeah, no, I can completely agree with that, and I think that kind of goes to this idea of the writer and that egomania that can come with the profession.
Yeah.
The funny thing about Barton and Mayhew is one of the most interesting elements to their relationship in the movie is I think it's driven so much by jealousy.
Sure.
The scene, the same scene where they have the big blow up fight
Yeah.
okay, so it's that same scene, and when Barton does kind of attack him and says like your first obligation is to your gift,
Right.
and I think that kind of thing comes from the same that comes from that jealousy place, I should say. And so meeting your idol, and like I said, coming into this situation, when the first time they meet in the bathroom, and he's like, "Oh my God, like you're WP Mayhew, like
Yeah.
oh my God," and like so it's this big deal, and he like goes to the office or whatever, and obviously that doesn't end up seeing him because he finds out right then that he's a fall down mean drunk,
Yep.
and then but the relationship still blooms, obviously, and so in that instance, you kind of feel for Barton because I think we all kind of have those people that we're like, oh, I'd love to meet this person,
Yeah.
because I'd love to talk to them about whatever profession it is, and it's usually a lot of times it's more of a letdown than what you might think it
Right.
is, and so I think that kind of in some ways I could see people kind of maybe getting a little upset with Barton, thinking that it's kind of uh, maybe just again kind of that egomania that is just annoying, I guess. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Kind of this kind of infatuation or this expectation, if you will, from WP Mayhew. But I think it almost humanizes him in a way because again, you can kind of see yourself in that scenario where it's like, you see somebody that you think has everything that you want,
Yeah.
and, but it's all kind of a facade.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely an avenue that I don't know if Barton can like sees himself potentially going down, and he doesn't want to end up that way. Being a great writer isn't going to necessarily bring you happiness.
Right.
And WP kind of like symbolizes that. Like it might not be the end of the tunnel might not be what you want.
Right.
And I think Burns kind of forward with him in some ways. Like you said, that line was like, "You owe it to your gift." Like I don't know if I necessarily agree with that in people's lives. Like if
Sure.
you're great, if we think about like professional football or something, if you're great at it but you want to retire early, yeah, I support that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you you don't owe me your gift. It's
Right.
your gift. Do with it what you want. So
Sure.
I think Barton's a little forward with that on WP. So in some ways, I was like, I kind of agree with WP a little bit more here. But then, of course, he ends up like slapping Audrey a couple minutes later. I'm like, yeah, I don't like you.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think as far as the likability of Barton, I think Audrey to a certain degree helps with that
She
because
humanizes him, yeah.
yeah, she humanizes him because of his care for her,
Yeah.
and especially in that situation, where clearly she's in an abusive relationship, but it's kind of that, you know, you run hot, but
Sure.
the byproduct of it is something great. So the writing element of it, you know what I mean? So it not a good situation to be in, but it kind of breeds this something that people want,
Yeah.
if you will, or like. Um, but obviously, in that situation, he's like, you got to get out of this because
Yeah.
WP's an asshole.
Well, it's funny, like, for your own safety, you gotta get out of this. But the day she spends with Barton is the day she gets killed.
Right, and that's fair. It's a really good point. And it's just it's such a great scene, because she has such compassion for him because obviously he's so wound up.
Yeah.
Through this whole movie, it's just like thing after thing after thing, and it's just he just cannot seem. He's all balled up. Again, just to use Charlie's term, he's all balled up, and obviously they end up sleeping together, and but that compassion for him in that moment almost kind of. I'm going to say this, and it might sound negative, and it's not necessarily, but almost like infantilizes him a little bit, but not in like a not necessarily a bad way,
Yeah,
like that, not
sure.
a demeaning way per se. Like I said, almost a humanizing way. Because it's like he doesn't seem like somebody who can make human connection easily.
No, yeah, he's very resistant to it. We kind of talked about why, he doesn't listen all that well,
Right.
and he maybe, as we're kind of saying with how he's, talking to WP, maybe he's like really steadfast in his own beliefs and
Yeah.
what he thinks is right and wrong, and maybe that is a bit of a handicap. Any strength taken too far is a handicap,
Right.
they say.
Yeah.
But let's. I think we've kind of gone through the movie well enough. Do you agree? Do you think we can maybe try to answer some of
let's
our
answer this-
podcast's questions?
Let's wrap this up and let's talk about some of these questions. So, well, you didn't answer the question. Do you think he's a likable character?
Well, I think I did. I
Or
said,
did you? Oh, that's
I said I
right.
root for him, but I don't
you don't necessarily
necessarily
find him
yeah,
likable. Okay,
yeah.
fair enough.
If I think he gets the benefit of the doubt since he is the lead character, but I'm
Sure.
not going to go hang out with him on the side.
Okay, well, now that we know where you hand on if you like him or not, let's find out what you think about the Coen Brothers. Do they like
I
Barton
like them.
Fink?
Yeah.
Well, obviously we love them. We don't even like them; we love them. So, but that is not the question. The question is, did the Coen Brothers like Barton or hate him?
That's a good question. I definitely think they are being self-deprecating in
Yeah,
a way,
I agree.
about writers, and I
Sure.
think that's strong. Like they, maybe they were catching on that they were starting to get something, starting to
Mhm.
go somewhere in Hollywood, and this is
Yeah.
their kind of way of keeping themselves in check,
Right.
because they definitely are not putting writers in the best light.
Sure.
So I like that they're this like meta self-deprecation
Yeah.
a little bit. I think that's cool. So I think because of that, they are kind of painting writers in this really negative vein.
Mm-hmm.
So I think right now, in the creation of this movie, the Coen Brothers did not like writers. At least that's what they were saying. Like, don't like us. Don't root for us. We're horrible people.
Yeah.
We're all about ourselves. We're all about our art. We don't care about other people. We don't listen.
Yeah.
So I think that's what they were kind of saying with this picture. Maybe just to, like I said, maybe just to kind of keep themselves in check. But what about you? What do you think? How would you answer it?
Yeah, no, I can completely agree. I think I imagine, obviously I've written stuff, I've worked in the industry a bit, but I've never been a writer on this level, and I think I could see the flaws in it, if you will. You know what I mean? And how that process could
some
be
of those
very
are universal.
grating. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And how it could be kind of a grating experience. And and as we said, with Barton Fink coming from the playwright world going to a screen world, it's not necessarily, it seems like it could be an easy translation, but probably not, especially
Yeah.
at this time. But I think there's a lot to be said about it. Like we kind of talked about, the machine of Hollywood.
Yep.
And that. And but I think that you're right. There's that self-deprecation element of it where writers are typically very full of themselves in that way, and I think the Coen brothers were definitely exploring that aspect of it, and in conversely how Hollywood treats writers,
Yeah.
and that one minute they're telling you you're the greatest thing ever just to get you to write something, and then as soon as you write something, they tell you it's crap,
Right.
and they don't really give a crap what you think. If you thought, if I gave a damn what you thought, I just might as well quit now and let you run the studio, like
Sure.
you know what I mean, like that kind of thing. So, yeah, I think ultimately, I think yes, I think that the Coen brothers do like they are, Barton Fink is written by writers about who love writers, but they are not uh, blind to who writers are.
Sure. They see their own flaws.
Yeah, and I think that's really to the point where, but so there's that thin line between love and hate. But I think they're on the love side, but they are wide-eyed, clear-eyed about what being a writer is. But that is the question between you and I.
Sure.
But the question solely for you, Ray,
Oh,
and
boy.
the big question of Say Hello to My Little Film, the whole reason why we are here, and that is, Ray, did you like Barton Fink, and would you recommend it?
Right, this time I'm talking about the new movie, not the character.
Right.
Yes,
Right. We will clear that
yes.
up. It is about the movie, not just the character.
I did like Barton Fink. You knew I would. It's a Coen Brothers
Yeah,
movie.
I had a sneaking suspicion,
Yeah.
but
This era Coen Brothers is right up my alley.
yeah, I love this era.
I love the actors in it. John Turturro is great.
Yep.
I'm a huge John Goodman fan.
Yeah.
Always was since I was a kid. And even though I didn't see this, I saw him plenty in this time period in Roseanne and
Yep.
just countless other stuff. But so I love the cast. I just feel like the vibes of Coen Brothers, like you can tell these are like the early vibes, like they're still growing into themselves. But
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like they just have such a unique style that I think is like it's just I don't know, it's just enjoyable. You just get enthralled into the movie.
Yeah.
Even if you have a lead character that's not incredibly likable, you still are like, I just love being a part of this world. I love the meta look at writers, the meta look at Hollywood, and how it's they'd rather produce crap than something good at times. They just want to produce something.
Yeah.
So I just love that commentary that they were able to put on the movie. And then the last 40 minutes, just putting in this bit like these couple of these big twists where kind of take the movie in a little bit different direction than I thought it was going with. I just thought they were going to find inspiration. He's going to finally listen to Charlie, and he's just going to write a movie about a salesman. But no, boom, there's murder, there's intrigue, there's a building burning on fire, police getting shot with shotguns
Yeah.
by a serial killer. So I loved that they cranked up the action in the last act. I thought pacing wise that worked out like perfectly. So yeah, I really liked a lot about this movie. It was really enjoyable. I'm glad I can cross off my list.
That's awesome. Yeah, you had mentioned John Turturro. The Coens specifically wrote this movie for him.
Smart.
So they had worked with him on Miller's Crossing, and they worked with him on Miller's Crossing. That's right, and that's what caused them to write this specifically for John Turturro, which obviously they ended up working with him more since he was in the Big Lebowski
Well
and
earned.
stuff like that. But yeah, no, you're right. This era of Coen Brothers is really amazing, and it's I don't want to call it overlooked because I feel like it's not fair, but it just where they've come now, how
Yeah.
far they've come since then. Again, they've won numerous Oscars at this point. They've whether you want to talk about Fargo or No Country for Old Men or
Big Lebowski, Oh Brother.
right, or Oh Brother Where Art Thou, exactly. Like they've it feels like
It could get lost in the catalog.
right, yeah, like it feels like some people might want to call this lesser Coen Brothers, but I think this is just this era is so good because you're right. I think they were young, they were still hungry, they were still writing these really interesting movies, and they were still that kind of new voice.
Yeah.
And I think that is really, I mean, it was really great and still, I think, very inspirational for a lot of directors that came after them. Like I said, I think you could make a strong argument that they were really one of like the forebears of like the modern dramedy,
Sure.
because of their style of filmmaking. And yeah, I love this so much. Whether it's Miller's Crossing, Blood Simple, Raising Arizona, obviously Barton Fink. You cannot go wrong with this era of Coen Brothers.
All right, Rob. Well, let's not end this episode for Barton Fink until we talk about some of the other stuff we've been watching. I think we've kind of seen a lot of things together.
Yeah, we've been watching a lot of things together.
So let's knock them out. I mean, a couple weeks ago we saw Superman.
We went and saw Superman.
You had reservations. I was excited, and I liked it.
Yeah, I have to say I'm not a fan of Superman as a character. I really haven't been, maybe ever. I don't know.
Too invincible.
Yeah, I'm just not really that into Superman. So, they've tried to redo it so many times, and then when I heard they were doing it again, I'm just like, ugh. But then James Gunn is doing it, and I am a big James Gunn fan. And in the back of my mind, I said, all right, if there's anybody that could make me give a crap about Superman, it could be James Gunn, and it was.
Yeah,
it was. I really enjoyed it. I was shocked how much I enjoyed it, actually.
I'm glad. I was too. I thought he did a good job of, like, it didn't feel like Guardians necessarily. It felt like its own thing.
Definitely.
They did a lot of world building, but I still like Clark Kent was barely in the movie, which I appreciate. Like, this movie is Superman, and it's good that Clark Kent can do some stuff, but this is a Superman movie, and that's the character you have to sell, and that's the character you have to win over. Like, they had to win you over on, and I think they, for the most part, they probably checked most of those boxes.
Yeah, I agree. It was a fun movie, so I think that was good. I think it was kind of a nice change of pace from the disaster that was the Snyderverse. Yeah. And if there's any Snyderverse fans out there right now getting really mad, I don't care.
Sorry. We've died on that hill already. We're not going back there.
Right.
But speaking of movie theaters, we also saw The Fantastic Four.
We saw The Fantastic Four. And I will say I enjoyed it, but I did find it a little underwhelming.
At least the third act was.
Yeah, I think for going and pulling out Galactus as a villain, I felt like it just didn't. On that front, it could have felt bigger. He could have felt bigger, pun intended. I don't know. Like, and especially for what I've read about how he's gonna kind of be the new, or not Galactus, but
Reed Richards.
Reed Richards is going to kind of be the new Tony Stark. Like, I felt like this movie needed to feel a little more impactful, and I don't know if it did.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of heavy speculation that, like, their Galactus was going to destroy their world. They were going to escape to the Marvel universe.
Right.
And that's not necessarily what happens, which was kind of surprising. I mean, I guess I was surprised that all those rumors were wrong, but I do maybe think that the movie would have been, like, hit harder if those rumors were right. But overall, I'll say I did like the cast.
Yeah,
Fantastic Four has failed.
There's no part of the movie that I guess piece of the movie that I didn't like in that regard. I think the casting is great. I thought the world they built was great.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like a diorama. It felt like a living, breathing period world that I thought that worked well.
Yeah. So, for a franchise that's essentially failed twice, or really lacked any kind of sincerity, I thought that they did a really good job of bringing some levity and bringing some, like, seriousness, I guess, back to the Fantastic Four. I like that. It wasn't very quippy. The last two Marvel movies really weren't. So they're kind of like, all right, we might have overcorrected there, and we got too quippy, and it's too formulaic, and so I do think they're breaking the trends a little bit. They're kind of hitting a soft little reset, and maybe kind of starting over a little bit and kind of getting back on track. So hopefully that's the case. The next movie is an Avengers movie, I think. So they better be right.
No, the next movie is Brand New Day. Spider-Man Brand New Day. It comes out 365 days from today, or sometime. I saw it online the other day. It was like 1 year out.
Okay.
Brand New Day.
Well, very cool. So well, then we got one more bite at the apple before we get ready for Avengers. That's cool.
Yeah.
Netflix, we checked out
Happy Gilmore 2.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be charitable. It was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. For Adam Sandler, his whole Netflix run, the whole Happy Madison run, I think has felt kind of very hit or miss.
A lot of miss.
I think the movie he made with his daughter about the bar mitzvah
that wasn't too bad.
Was pretty good. It was kind of outside of his normal shtick.
Yeah.
So I think that worked. Happy Gilmore obviously being a huge milestone in our
Yeah.
younger years. I think that's it's hard to make that again.
Yeah, I really didn't want them to necessarily. Like, I totally understand where
Right.
Adam Sandler is now. Like, he's older as we are. His humor's changed. He likes doing stuff with his friends. So that's what Grown Ups is all about.
Right.
So I was kind of scared when they're going to start, walking into Happy Gilmore territory, and I thought they were going to kind of bring that formula to Happy Gilmore, which I wasn't necessarily excited about. And I think for the most part they did bring that formula in. Like,
Yeah.
I will say I felt a lot of the scenes were kind of like cameo, nostalgia thing from the original movie, joke, plot, repeat that in the next scene, then repeat that in the next scene, and like every
Right.
scene was a cameo or nostalgic reference, or then a little bit of plot and a joke, and just kind of felt like that was like the formula for every scene.
Yeah, yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with that. I appreciate that they kind of made Happy a little bit of a I don't know if I want to say a darker character, but I guess just that kind of that grizzled grown up kind
Yeah.
of character, and I think that worked. One thing I did feel weird was, leading up to the release, I saw multiple interviews with Julie Bowen, who played, from the original, who
Yeah.
plays his wife in this one, and she talking about, I was really surprised they would bring me back as his wife. Like, I really thought that they would, cast some younger woman to be his wife or whatever, and so leading up to it, I'm like, oh well, that's cool, but then spoiler alert, she died in like the first
Right
5 minutes
away.
of the movie, and I'm like, oh well, okay, like you're
Yeah.
surprised they brought you back for 5 minutes, like,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
Yeah, I was like, it was fine. I think I saw her do a lot of publicity for the thing, like talking about the kid actor. So I don't know if she was just selling or what, but, um, I also I wasn't a huge fan of the way she died. Like, I don't think that,
Yeah,
like, for a comedy movie, like, was it kind of funny, I guess, but like, you don't like go into the emotional pitfalls of what it would be like to actually do that to a person.
right. Your
But
spouse, like the woman you
yeah,
love, the mother of your children,
so
like
it's like,
it is kind of like an interesting spot to be, I guess.
yeah, it's like, I don't know, it's too much for me. But I will say, so there's a lot of things I didn't like about the movie, but I will say I laughed a lot. So at the end of the
Yeah.
day, I guess that's all that really matters, and that's all you really want from a comedy.
Yeah, no, and I can agree with that. Like the laughs were there, the cameos were fine. Becky Lynch, if you're a wrestling fan,
Yes.
Becky Lynch was in there for a hot minute.
A lot of
so
golfers if
a
you're a
lot of
golfer
golfers,
fan,
a lot of
so-
golfers, a lot of golfers. I figured were golfers who I didn't know were golfers because I don't know golfers,
Right.
but I could tell they were golfers.
Yeah, and I thought they were kind of funny. They didn't actually look that bad at acting. So
No,
overall, fine. Like, does it
Yeah.
measure up to the original to me?
No,
No.
not
I
even
would be
remotely.
shocked if anybody thought this was better than the original, um, but it was fine. It was
Yeah.
fine. It was funny. It was a good one-time watch. I'm probably not going to ever see it again. I'll probably rewatch Happy Gilmore a lot,
right.
but I'm not probably ever going to come back and watch this.
Yeah. The last thing, and I know we both finished this.
talked
and
about it a lot.
We'll talk about it, and we'll talk about it more, and that is the 4th season of The Bear.
Which we just loved The Bear so much for 2 seasons.
Yeah.
Like, it was just art and television and character development. It was so good.
Yeah. And I do think this season was better than last, because I know we talked about last season
Yeah.
in our last season
Yeah.
of this show,
Very disappointed in
and
it.
it was very disappointing. And I feel like this one was a bit of a rebound, because at least they allowed the narrative to wrap up in some way,
Yeah.
instead of season 3, which wrapped up in no way. But it's still a season where it's got really good episodes. It's got really good episodes that almost feel detached from the series as a whole.
Yeah, that's the problem. Is their best episodes are not the linear storytelling episodes. They're almost like side track episodes,
Right. And
Or scenes, even.
yeah, and then you get because like the wedding episode was obviously fantastic, and that kind
Yeah.
of felt very reminiscent of the Christmas episode,
Yeah.
flashback episode from, was it season 2?
Yep.
And I mean, just it's really, really good episode. And then there was oh man,
Well-
the one with Ayo Edebiri where she was like on her own.
Yes,
And
Sydney.
yeah, when she was on her own, and that one was like a pretty good episode. But again, it kind of felt like an episode unto itself in some ways.
Yeah.
And then of course when you bring in Jamie Lee Curtis, who is she is just a damn titan.
She in
Of
this
acting.
show she is.
She is a
I mean, she
titan.
is just insane.
It
The
blows
energy.
my mind how good she is.
Her character just looks
Ugh.
so hard to play because she's so
Oh,
manic. She's
right.
so like just difficult
It's-
to be around. I don't know how she could like have to do multiple versions of those scenes and
Yeah.
not just pass out.
And it's the little things. It's the little motions, little movements. There's such nuance to her performance. She blows everybody out of the water
Yeah.
on this show, and she's usually, if she's in it for an episode, or maybe a scene, because I think the last season she was in it for a scene because she comes to the restaurant and then doesn't go in, and I think that's the only time you see her last in season 3.
Well, no, she had the episode where she was.
Oh,
with,
and of course, in the
a
pregnancy.
great
Again,
episode.
a great episode that feels like it has absolutely, is
Nothing to
completely
do
an
with the rest of
island
the
unto
show.
itself. Right, exactly. So, yes, that episode for sure.
When she's in it, it's pretty much gold, but
yeah.
she's not in it a lot.
And it's funny. So I feel like this season kind of solidified it for me in the way that I look at the Bear. And I think the Bear at this point is, it's a great show. It signifies the food, is what I would say. Like, kind of what they're making, the food in the show that they're making now. It is great technically. It's great, but so totally unsatisfying at this point.
I agree. I agree 110%.
So and it's so funny that it kind of did that shift for me when they opened the Bear. Like when they closed the beef and opened the Bear is kind of where that started. So it's almost like, is it supposed to be meta in that way? Like it's supposed to be unsatisfying because that's like the type of food you're making now, or what?
Yeah, I don't. It's like they they struggle to make like I don't know like what they're doing with like the Bear and like what's the lead actor's name? My gosh, I'm drawing a blank.
Jeremy Allen White.
Yeah, but who? I guess his character. Carmy. Yeah, it's like they're struggling to give Carmy weaknesses, so it's like they're just making him do things that would just like sabotage.
Right.
It's kind of like when you watched House of Cards. Like what made Frank a great character for so long was like he could get himself out of any situation.
Yeah.
And then like the last 3 seasons, they just always have him fail, and you're like, this is not what I like about Frank. Like this is not what the show is.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel that about Carmy. It's like, well, now Carmy isn't the best cook and like doesn't appear to be the best top 3 cooks in his kitchen now, and he makes all these bad decisions when like a cousin does a better job and his sister does a better job at running. Like he doesn't run it well. It's like, well, what is Carmy good at? Like, what do I like Carmy for now? I forget.
Yeah. Well, and it's hard too when so a lot of his shortcomings, and his weakness and need for the season is kind of like simple, stupid stuff. Like, oh, I need to lock the menu so that I don't drain the finances of our business. It's just just simple business stuff. You know what I mean? It's just like, yeah, obviously you don't run a restaurant this way,
right?
You know what I mean? Like, and it's like finally like his big arc is, oh, I'm gonna lock the menu. Oh, good,
thanks.
Like that's great, and I get it. Like I'm not saying you can't make an arc out of that. I don't know. Like again, it just doesn't. It didn't have that satisfying feeling that the earlier seasons had.
Yeah, because it was really about self-sabotage. I don't think they were clear enough on if he was doing it on purpose or if he was doing it subconsciously, and so it's hard to get that fulfilling feel. But overall, like they do so many good things, but then they just do so many things. Just like you're better than this, and just like you said, it leaves you unfulfilled,
unsatisfied.
All right. Well, we're just about ready to wrap up this episode of Barton Fink, and it did not stink. So that was great.
That's true. We should have. I can't believe it took us this long to say Barton Fink did not stink.
But we are done. But the audience is not done because we are creators. We are creators, and they need to grovel upon us, and they need to like the podcast, subscribe to the podcast, and review the podcast if they can. If you leave us a 5-star review, we're gonna read it live on air someday. Email us. If you email us at carrayrob@gmail.com, that would be great. We could talk to you there. Or we can reach out to you on Blue Sky at carrayrob.
Absolutely. And if you don't mind sharing the podcast with everybody you'd be doing us a great favor. We are trying so hard to grow our listening audience, and every little bit of help
when you share,
greatly
you show
appreciated.
us you care.
Exactly, and we want to feel how much you care. We will be back next week with this month's A Copy of a Copy.
I'm excited about it.
I'm half excited about it because we are going to be watching the original and the remake of Aladdin.
Should we call it Al or just Den? Or how about Laddie?
Laddie. Yeah, no, I love the original. I have never seen the remake.
This will be one of the first times we've ever watched a movie that you haven't seen.
I know. So
A Copy of a Copy.
Part of the reason why we've decided to do it, and we wanted to check out one that could just really feel like a cash grab.
Yep.
So we're going to see how that goes. Then we will be back in 2 weeks, and it will be Ray's episode of Say Hello to My Little Film. And I'm interested.
You should be.
I should. I didn't like your last one.
I know, and I'm not gonna go too far away from that. I'm gonna stay on some of the same themes,
Oh
so
boy.
I have to save that.
Well, we're gonna see how that goes, and you are not gonna want to miss it, no matter what. So until then, this is Car Ray Rob,
Where Ray.
and I'm Rob. And remember, be defined by the films you love, not the ones you hate.
Hey there, it'll be just a little while till Ray and Rob spit their spittle. Come on, check out of the hospital. So grab some of your best peanut brittle. This will be a darn good transmittal. And say hello to my little film.
All right, everybody, Ray here. I want to tell you in 2 weeks, the movie that I'm going to present to Robbie is The Stanford Prison Experiment from 2015. It's about 1971 when on the campus of Stanford, they did a little prison experiment and kind of reveals a lot about human nature. It's going to be kind of a continuation of the conversation I had with Rob when we did The Lord of the Flies. Great cast with Ezra Miller before he was crazy, Ty Sheridan, Billy Crudup, and Michael Angarano was really great in this movie. So check it out before that, and see you in 2 weeks when we get to talk about it.